All right.
All right. Good morning. Welcome to this tech talk. I'm going to be talking about some work that I did over the summer on API client libraries, and I'm going to be talking about, from a developer's perspective, how you're going to pick a good one. How, if you're a developer working on them, how to make a good one, and if you've already written one, you'll learn a bit about how to make it better. So before I dig in, I just want to establish that these are all basically the same thing. So I'm going to call it an API client library. Around Wikipedia, you'll also hear it called a bot framework or a bot library, but what it is software that makes it easier for developers to write.
So San Francisco just got muted.
All right.
Oops. Let's see.
You're good.
Okay. So what do people use these for? They're used for writing and running bots on wikis, so automating tasks like welcoming new users or cleaning up vandalism or identifying vandalism, or other tasks that are, I mean, for a while there was keeping the interwiki links, the interlanguage links going. Aside from, so there's bot running. There's also using it to create data sets for doing research. So you can figure out that you want all the edits by this specific set of users in this time in this namespace, and get only the information that you want in an up-to-date manner. You can also use them to write scripts to do various wiki maintenance tasks, and you can also use them as the data source and a number of people have for these neat projects that are somewhere, like data visualizations and stuff like that. And I've linked a couple. You can follow up. I'll put the slides up later. So common features of these things. Basically, the idea is that you want to. I mean, computers are for doing the stuff that's obnoxious to do by hand. And API client libraries are no exception to that. So if you have a library that will handle your HTTP requests, it'll handle cookies for you, it'll keep track of your session data, it can specifically make the MediaWiki API smoother to use. It's not always the most intuitive. It's not always the most intuitive thing to use, and there are also things which are features, but which are just a little bit take a little bit of doing to handle yourself, like query continuations and CSRF tokens. They can also have convenience methods for common API requests, just so you don't have to type out all of the parameters for the requests that, like logging in or a specific sort of search or getting categories. And they don't always, but they can add a layer of abstraction on top of the API. The MediaWiki API, in a lot of ways, reflects the MediaWiki database structure, and that can be, especially if you're a developer who's new to the MediaWiki API, that can be a little bit challenging to deal with when you're getting started. So if you don't want to think in terms of, getting a revision or getting a text extract, you can just say, okay, get me the page contents, and some client libraries will let you sort of think more on that level. So how are you going to pick one? Well, you can search Google, or you can go to the list of all of that I think is most of the client libraries that are out there. But there's a lot of them. And there's not necessarily, for a lot of languages, there's not a whole lot of specific information on the particular libraries. So that's a starting point in the sort of like, how do I find them? But when you're thinking about how to choose them, you want to think about the same things that are like, what makes any tool good? Well, it makes it easier or possible for you to do what you need to do. So yeah, you figure out what you need and you compare it to what's available, and that's really simple, right? It takes a little bit of research, and it means that you need to figure out what you need, and it means that you need to have some way to figure out what you might be able to expect, and that's where standards come in as a useful tool. When you have something that you can compare, you can sort of go down the list. Does it have these features that one might use? Okay, do I actually care about these things? Maybe, maybe not, but it's a tool to help you sort of to figure out what you need and what you might want to think about if you're writing one of these. For most of the rest of the talk, I'm going to take the perspective of talking about someone who's writing a client library, an API client library. But if you're looking for one to use in a project of your own, then you can just, not everything that I say is going to be applicable to you, of course, but you can take it as a starting point for things that you might want to be looking for. So as part of my work over the summer, I wrote this gold standard for what sort of, as MediaWiki developers, we want to see from a MediaWiki API client library. So the general outline of this, and I'm going to go through each of these in some more detail and talk about the reasoning behind the points on the standard, is that it should be easy to install. You shouldn't have to shave too many yaks to get going with it. It should be easy to understand. It should be easy to look at the project page and say, okay, what can I even expect to get out of this? Is this a sort of hefty framework? Is this something that just handles the HTTP and cookies and stuff for me? How heavyweight is it? What am I going to get out of this? It should also be easy to use. So once you sit down and start writing code, you don't want to have to go, oh, this feature turned out wasn't included even though I thought that it was, or, oh, I need to change these defaults so that I'm complying with the policies for the MediaWiki API. And if there's sample code, then so much better. It should be easy to tell what's wrong, and as a part of this. As a part of this sort of shared ecosystem of open source libraries and based on the open source MediaWiki, it should be easy to improve and to contribute and to give back if you find something that you can make it work better, and so you do. All right, so I'll start with easy to install. I'm sure there's someone in the world who really enjoys setting up development environments, but I'm guessing that's not most of us. So as a library developer, and And I should say, most of these things are small projects. They're volunteer written, they're volunteer maintained, and so I don't want to be like, oh, you all are not doing enough. This is terrible. That's not the point of this. But the point is that if you want the library that you've written and you've shared to be something that other people can use and use easily, these are things that you might think about when you're trying to make that wikis. So as far as setup goes, your goal is to make getting started as smooth as humanly possible, so that developers don't have to put in a bunch of time and effort to figure out if the library is even going to work for them. So a starting point you can take is just write up what you've done to get it working on your own system. And there's, for various languages, there's a lot of existing tools that can make it easier, package managers and such. So another thing that I found is that you want to make sure the installation instructions not only exist, but are correct and easy to find. It sounds obvious, but it's an easy thing to overlook, it seems. So you want to, so you can also package the library for installation through package managers. So if people are already using those tools, they'll be able to just get your library through that. And you can consider making it available through various Linux package managers. That's kind of a, if you want to, it can be nice, but the language app level package managers are a really good starting place here. Okay, so your developer can get started with this and can install it. So the next question is, can I sit down and look at this and figure out if it's applicable and how to use it to make the project work? So what's it capable of? What are its limitations? How does it work? And what sort of stuff is it designed for? Is it designed for pulling down data to get your data sets together for research? Is it designed for Wikibots? Is it, what's the purpose? And here, you can approach this from a couple of angles. So the first thing, follow general principles of good API design, and I'll say more about that in a little bit. But when you're writing an API client library, you're writing an API on top of the API. So those principles are going to apply. If someone's looking at your code, they should be able to understand it. It should be readable. It should be commented as applicable, and most importantly, it should be documented. Source code is not documentation. Like it can be a place to look, but ideally you'd have comprehensive and accurate and up-to-date and also easy to find documentation.
I was also going to add maybe, like, for me, when I'm reading documentation, I find it easier to understand when I can get, like, a snapshot of how to use the functions or whatever in a larger scope, and as well as, like, visually. So sometimes it kind of gets lost as to how something fits in context. So if you can give, like, an overview first of how it fits in the larger context, and then go into detail, then that's really a lot more helpful than just being like, well, here's the stuff and here's the parameters.
Yeah. Oh, yes, definitely. So yeah, when you would use when you would want to use something, not just how to use it. Yeah, definitely. And then on the easy to find, if you don't already know to look for it, so finding a GitHub wiki is not, the UI there is not the most intuitive. So if that's where you have your docs, put a link in the README or something like that, just so that people actually know. You don't have to find the tab on the side and click that. So talking about those API design principles, the biggest one is that you want to be very deliberate about what layer of abstraction you're working on. So if you're writing functions to sort of handle the API call in general versus parse the response that comes back, you want to separate those as much as possible so that developers who are using your library know where to look and have the appropriate signposts for what to use how. You also want to avoid redundancy. If you have a couple of methods that are doing basically the same thing, but are slightly different, make sure that you need all of them and highlight those differences. Don't make the developer who's using this guess. Naming is considered one of the biggest problems in computer science, and that's for a reason. So for the API, names should be descriptive, and they should relate to the relevant level of abstraction that they're working on, so that a developer can look at the list and make a good guess at where they want to start. And again, use your language's idioms and conventions, and all of this boils down to don't surprise your users. So that's the sort of easy, making it easy to wrap your head around and get started. When you're writing code, you want it to be easy to use, and this sort of leads into easy to understand because you need one to do the other. But you want to make it easier to use your library than not to use it. So the benefits need to outweigh the frustrations. So that means that you want to make it clear what features your library offers. You want to clearly, if it's an API client library, you want it to offer access to one or more of the APIs, so MediaWiki, but also if it can handle Wikidata, that's a somewhat different API, but is also useful. It should, again, offer documentation that's not source code, and it should offer the sample code. And on sample code, if you offer it, it's going to be used because programmers like to take the resources that are offered and not do more work than they have to. And when I'm talking about good here, what I mean is efficient and courteous and secure. So if you can make your underlying library code efficient in terms of API calls, that's work that's going to allow your developers to do that. If you have your library defaults lined up with what's expected for MediaWiki API clients, then that's changes that your developers don't have to make. And if you're using HTTPS for your requests, then that's by default. Then that's again a choice that developers who are writing the API clients don't have to make. So here are just there's some overlap with the easy to understand, but these are things that you want to consider if you're writing or maintaining one of these libraries. Okay, and everyone's favorites, debugging. Programs are made of code. Code has bugs. More code, more bugs. And this is just one of those facts of life. So, given this, how can we reduce developer frustration in finding these things and make it as easy as possible to track down the difference between what you expect and what you found? So first, you can make the expected behavior clear. If you have a function that has a side effect, make that clear. Don't make that a surprise. Make the bugs in the library easy to find, and make it easy for developers to find what they're actually expecting from the underlying MediaWiki API. So to do that, a couple of things you can do. You can write unit tests for at least the longest and most frequently modified functions in the library. So that means that if you're changing up your library code, then if you're changing up your library code, then you can tell if you've broken something or if this is just something that your users are doing themselves.
How do you test that normally? Do you directly run it against the MediaWiki API, or do you have a mock? Or
I think it depends on what you're trying to test exactly. I've seen both approaches.
So are you aware of a library that uses a mock currently?
I'm trying to. The one that I spent the most time looking at the tests on was Java Wikibot framework, and if I'm remembering correctly, there were some mocks, but some of it was just test if you can get to the API and then run the rest of the tests.
Okay.
So, and if you're getting really clever, then it's polite to just comment and say either, okay, I know this is hacky, but this is the corner case I'm addressing, or sort of just if you're doing something unexpected, then they can edit that. And you can also just to make it easier to make it easier for developers to sort of sort out the layers, you can link to the relevant section of the API docs for methods when that's applicable. Okay, so you have this library, people are using it, people are maybe sending in some feedback. You want to make it easy to improve. So what are things that make it hard to improve? When contributions are ignored, like someone sends in a pull request and it just sits there for months. When projects look dead, so there's no node. It looks like it might be updated sometimes, but there hasn't been anything for the last several breaking changes to the API, and it's sort of unclear what the status is. If someone's looking to contribute, but there's no really obvious starting point, that can be a sort of like, well, I don't know, maybe I could do this, or maybe I could go do something else. And there's, I haven't run into this in any of these libraries, which is awesome. But it's the internet. Hostility and disrespect are also areas to people wanting to engage.
Say, we lost audio for San Francisco again.
Sorry,
Sorry.
All right. Is it?
Did it just go to sleep?
It's good now.
Okay.
Good. Because of typing.
So you can respond to contributions and feedback, even if
Just sit
even
away
if it's,
from it.
Go on.
you can
I'm
respond
away
to
from
Ah.
this
you
thing.
can respond to contributions and feedback, even if it's just a, like, hey, thank you for the bug report, or sorry, this isn't currently maintained, but I'm glad that it's been useful for you, or something like that. If there's someone who's new to the project or new to writing the API clients, you can have a sort of like welcome new developer section on in your docs somewhere. You can one of the most important things I've found for encouraging new contributors is to document your development practices, not just your code. So, and if you're doing that, you can also sort of, if you have bugs or issues that you think, okay, yeah, this wouldn't be that big a deal, but I don't have, I'm not going to deal with it anytime soon, you can mark that as maybe something that a new contributor might want to take on. So I think that the biggest thing here, I feel, is to set accurate expectations. I mean, people are busy, library maintainers are busy, developers are busy. So if your library is unmaintained, say so. If it's accepting pull requests and keeping up with breaking changes, but there's no new development, say so. If it's under active development, that's cool. Say so. You can, beyond being courteous yourself, you can also set expectations for respectful behavior in project-related spaces. If you're maintaining it, you can, like I said, respond. One other thing is that you can note compatibility with MediaWiki versions. So it's not that you write one of these and you're obligated to keep it up to date, but it is helpful for people who might want to use it to say, okay, this works up to version 19, and that's it. So just giving people the information that they need to decide, to make the decisions about what tools they want to use, is the most important thing here. You want to respect your own time, and you also want to respect other people's time. And just for the sort of legalities, you can, if you actually release it under a free license, no one has to worry about there not actually being a license to say what they can and can't do with it. So in general, there's code-related ways you can improve usability, and there's ways that aren't strictly code-related. So good API design, keeping those levels of abstraction in mind, and testing appropriate to what you want to be doing. Use tools that are available for you. So to keep up to date, you can use you can use tools that pull the documentation out of the comments. You can use package managers, etc. And you can have good defaults and good examples in the code that you write. Things that are not code as such is make your intentions clear, communicate clearly, make those examples clear and usable, and have documentation and have it accessible and readable, and with context, what you're using, how you would use it, the rest of that. And pretty much all of this comes down to respect and empathy. If you've written one of these, you're a developer, and that gives you some idea for what other people might be looking for. I'm not going to spend too much time on resources. These are mostly for for people who want to follow up with the slides. There's the client code page. There's evaluations for about 12, so far there's evaluations for about 12 libraries compared to that gold standard. If you want to improve, if you want to add to those, then please do. Larger library projects might have a list or IRC. There might even be presentations about how to use them, by Wikibot, for example. Developerexperience.org has a lot of good links on sort of thinking about developer experience, because developers are people too, just like software users are. And you can also look up documentation tools for your language. General API resources, the API sandboxes are a really great place to sort of help get your head around how it works and what the options are. Various documentation. There's this dev.wikimedia.org is in progress, but when it's up, it'll be a sort of starting point for people who want to engage with development using MediaWiki API and similar. And there's the mailing list. So yeah, just a couple of quick ways to get involved. If you do use one of these API client libraries, you can help improve it. You can help evaluate these, especially the PHP ones. After I finished the work I was doing this summer, I had a couple of inquiries about whether I was planning to do any for the many available in PHP, and unfortunately that's not something that I'm working on, but if it's something that you are, that's good. Offer feedback, and you can contribute to more documentation. So I do want to acknowledge a handful of people. I was doing this work as part of my internship through the GNOME free and open source software outreach program. My mentors were Sumana Harihareswara and Salah Fahim, and Brad George and Merlin Van Dien gave me a lot of helpful advice as I was working on the project, and Kinjil helped run the project and make sure that everything went smoothly. So thank you very much, and if you have any questions, I will answer them. Is there anything from IRC?
If you're in the Hangout, you can ask any questions you have directly. Max, if you have anything, go ahead.
As an API developer, I can just add a couple of words that we are doing a lot of deprecations in the API, so we recommend you to use libraries that use the JSON format. And if you're developing a library that relies on something else, we recommend you to think about migrating to JSON. And another thing, libraries should set the user agent clearly. Oops, sorry. Sorry. So that if something goes wrong, people will be able to see from your user agent that it's a bot, and ideally whose bot this is.
And if you can include a method to generate a user agent given contact information and similar, that's even better. Just reducing the barrier to
ideal client library sets its own user agent header and allows you to add the client information to it. That's it from my point of view.
Anything else?
So I was wondering, Francis, I was just looking through that that API client code page on Meta, and I didn't see like a summary of the ratings that you gave. Is there like a table with a row per client library that we can reference?
There isn't. The information right now, I think, is just in the individual evaluations page. But that's a good idea to have something that people can look at a glance and figure out just sort of if it meets the basic things they need.
Mm-hmm. Oh, as a API client developer, I would really love to get a quick overview and updates on what's being deprecated, what sort of standard practices are. Like right now, I know that there's sort of a transition about query continuation, but I have no idea if that already happened, when it's going to happen. How should I best keep up on this?
You should subscribe to the MediaWiki API mailing list.
I'm on that mailing list, but there's just too many. And so, like, there's often discussions about stuff that doesn't really affect me as an API client code developer.
Well, then subscribe to the MediaWiki API announce mailing list.
Okay, there's a separate one.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
All right. I think that's it. Thanks so much for coming. Sumana added some links on IRC. Thank you for your time.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.